This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional medical advice or be a substitute for therapy. Please contact a mental health professional as needed. If you are in need of urgent or emergency health care, please contact your medical and/or mental health provider, call 911, or go to your nearest emergency room. The information presented in this podcast does not reflect the opinions of those with whom Dr. Ellick might be affiliated as an employee, consultant, or colleague, past or present. Welcome back to another episode of From Mayhem to Mindset with Dr. Laura. I am your host, Dr. Laura Ellick, and we have another guest with us today. This guest is a 2024 college graduate from Keiser University, graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Sport Management, and is currently living back in New York, pursuing his passions in the sport arena. But actually, what's really cool about this individual is, believe it or not, he's also my son. So I got a little in getting this guest on. But what I really want to talk about today is the concept. We've talked about some other athletes related to the idea of mindset. But here's something that's a little bit of a twist. Trevor has ADHD, and he was what I consider to be a late diagnosis of ADHD, although even looking at the statistics and the data, he wasn't diagnosed actually that late. And I don't know if people know this, but in looking up the data about ADHD, the CDC in 2023 said that 15.5 million adults, that's 6% of the US population, has ADHD. 7.1 million children from ages 3 to 17, 11.4% of the population in 2022 has ADHD, but half of adults receive their diagnosis during adulthood. And for those who may or may not know, the prevalence of ADHD obviously occurs more in males than in females. But here's what's really cool is not only is Trevor a college graduate, he made it through with excellent grades, but he is also a two-time national champion in lacrosse. And so welcome to the show, Trevor. It's really nice to have you.
Happy to be here. Happy to support the program.
So is this your first big media appearance as part of your post-graduation tour?
Yeah, I'd say so. Definitely my first time being in front of a camera in a while. And happy to be here. And yeah, glad to be able to support this awesome podcast that you're doing.
Well, thank you. So we're really happy to have you here. And we're going to talk about a couple of different angles. Number one, I think it's really important to talk about ADD and ADHD and how it's so often the diagnosis is either missed or misdiagnosed. So tell us a little bit about your experience with ADHD and when you might have thought that this could actually be something that you were struggling with.
So my whole life, I had noticed that things were, a little odd for me. Not specifically ADD and ADHD, because I wasn't really, I wasn't really informed and educated on the subject and on the diagnosis, at all, really. I mean, it's not something that, you're taught in school or even really taught at home. So honestly, it was something that throughout my life, I never even thought was a possibility. But, throughout my, early, childhood and into my adulthood, I definitely noticed that there were things that I did that other kids didn't. I was always one of the kids that was super talkative in class. All my report cards, talkative in class, disruptive, all that stuff. I'm sure you can, confirm that. But, like, for instance, I remember in elementary school, there would always be an issue with, me calling out. And when I would do my work, I couldn't keep my mouth shut. So like, I would always be like singing or, making conversation and, being almost as a bit of a nuisance a little bit. And then when it comes to summer camps, I would always be doing too much. And then on the flip side of that, there was also the impulsivity. So a lot of times money burned a hole through, my pocket.
I can attest to that.
And so not even that, but just like, you know, impulsivity in terms of like relationships and doing stuff and saying stuff that you regret 5 seconds later. And it really impacted my relationships growing up. But I never confirmed it to be ADD or ADHD. I just thought that it was, my fault. And how could I say that? Just me being dumb and being a kid. But as I eventually learned what it was, all the symptoms lined up, the forgetfulness, all that stuff. The warning signs were there. I just never really had someone point it out to me until later in life.
And I think that's a really interesting point is that there are people who are textbook cases of ADHD. And listen, I'm a psychologist and I've often said to Trev, I am so sorry that I missed this. I mean, first of all, I'm not a child psychologist. However, the exposure that I had had to ADHD in my training was more of the textbook cases. Kids who are not just disruptive, but they're destructive. So, Trevor's kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Christie, who is just amazing, would just often talk about how talkative Trevor was, but he never had an angry temperament. So it was really hard to try to discipline Trevor in class, let's say, his kindergarten teacher said, because he was just such a ball of sunshine that it looked like he was just a really social kid. And she would say, I would want to send him to the principal's office just, as like some sort of punishment. But she said, I know that I would send him to the principal's office. He and the principal would make friends and then they would just hang out and they would talk all day and nothing would ever happen. So I think I need to point out also that, and I've done a lot of research since Trevor was diagnosed because, my goal is I never want to miss a diagnosis again because kids do suffer if they don't have early intervention. And one of the things that was so special about Trevor is he was just such a friendly kid and got along with a lot of people that because he was so incredibly sociable and had such a good nature that nobody ever thought. We just thought that he was like a chatty kind of kid. But what I really want to talk about with you, two things, Trevor, is one, if you have the mindset going on, and this podcast is all about mindset, but if your self talk is something like, there's something wrong with me, I'm doing something wrong, whatever else, like what do you think was going through your head? And how do you think that set the tone for other things that you may or may not do in your life?
So just kind of going back to what you just said earlier, like, there were a few like things that I did have to adjust my like mindset for and like, utilize. So like you said, one of the things that you said that you may have missed in term was that aggressive side of the ADHD. It was something that goes undiagnosed because I just understood how to it wasn't even that I understood how to use it. It just never was prevalent in my day to day life, but it was definitely there. I remember one time I went to the principal because I got in middle school. Actually, no, it may have been freshman year of high school. I got into a fight with someone. And it was something so stupid, but I used to just remember getting so angry about the littlest things. And, I remember one time, like, even on the football field, it became something that my coaches used to motivate because, like, they would call me lazy and stuff. And then I just remember getting into this just almost mindset of like a kill or be killed mindset. And it would just the next play, it would be like as if I went into a haze and then didn't remember what would happen. So that stuff that was something that I ended up utilizing towards, the latter half of my life where I would just almost anger myself to where it would be a release on the field and in that type of aspect. But I think that, like you said, there was a level of frustration there in myself when, I would ruin these relationships and stuff like that because of my impulsivity and all this stuff. And I started developing a mindset of can't live in the past. And that was something that really helped with my ADHD because I couldn't go back in time and fix the impulsivity and I couldn't go back in time and, fix my poor grades, but I could always just, build on it in the future. I think one of the things that was very hurt, like internally, was my grades were never where I wanted them to be when I was going through my ADHD because I just couldn't focus. I couldn't do homework, couldn't sit down and do it. Because any distraction would blow me up. My memory just wasn't there. And, but what I started to adjust and what I started to change my mindset was I started to almost like turn it into a challenge. And, when it came to stuff that I was super passionate about, I could develop like that sense of memory and that, almost focus, that hyper fixation, which is a part of ADHD as well, on those subjects. Like I was always super into sports and I would able to memorize that stuff, but I couldn't memorize school. So I became to utilize a challenge of, hey, let me try and hyper focus on school as opposed to
Oops, you're cutting out. Can you step into your mic a little bit? Are you close to, can you hear?
I'm,
Yeah,
I'm
there you
sorry,
go.
can you
You
repeat
cut out.
that?
Yeah, you cut out a little bit. Just make sure you're staying close to the mic.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Did you hear what I just said?
Yeah, I got it. One of the things that I think you said that is super important, and this was a title of a book that I'd read on ADHD very early on, and it was something like you're not lazy, crazy, or stupid. And that's one of the things that people with ADHD often they get mislabeled, right? So as I've gone through trying to learn more about ADHD and neurodivergence, it's really an issue with executive functioning, planning, organization, recall. And here's where I saw the impulsivity, looking back on it now, played out, is just in your inability to refrain from teasing your sister. Like there was always like poking, poking, poking. It was almost like you couldn't stop, even though you knew it was something that you didn't want to be doing. And I could often see like he knows there's a negative consequence to this. Why can he not stop? And that's where I can see how ADHD can really have an impact on relationships. It's not that you want to be doing that. It's just it happens before you even have a chance to think about it. And I also want to point out is your grades were not horrific. This was, Trevor was a kid who was doing well. It wasn't like a kid who was getting F's or C's or D's where we had to worry about him going to college. But once we finally had an assessment done and got you appropriate treatment, for your senior year, you were in, I think, 4 AP classes and you just like your grades went through the roof. And it was amazing to kind of see that change. So as you started having those successes, were you able to change that early mindset from there's something wrong with me or there's something going on to, okay, now I can make this work for me?
100%. And I think my life, like the satisfaction in my life changed as well. A lot of times I would just be frustrated going to school and I would hate school because it would just be such a nuisance to get through. And I think once I realized like, oh my God, this is what life should be like with a clear mind and the ability to focus, like my mindset changed because I believed I could do things. Like you said earlier, you start to become discouraged in terms of like your ADHD and stuff like that because you just feel like, you're going to fail. I think I remember vividly in seventh grade biology, us studying amoebas for like 2 hours. And then I went to a test and I got a C. And it's like, all this time studying, like, what the hell is the point? Right? I mean, like, and then now fast forward to end of junior year, early senior year, I would study and then I would get the grade that I felt I deserved. And then just to kind of correlate from school and then onto the lacrosse field, my entirety of like high school, I really had no belief that I could play collegiate sports. I just didn't think that I had what it took. And part of that was because of my ADHD and my just inability to feel that I could work hard for something. And then I was exposed to the remedies for it, and I became like almost uh, immersed in this belief that I could. I started focusing at practice, like really focusing on the guys in front of me, what they were doing. I really started working hard, going that extra mile because I could now. And I think your mindset, you know, definitely flipped. My switch flipped, and my mindset went from I can't to I can. And that was a result of my ability to now be able to put in that extra 10%, that extra 15% because of my newfound belief in myself.
So, what people often say is, is this a question of someone with ADHD not being motivated? After we take a quick break, we will find out the answer to that question. Okay, so we left right before the break with the question of, listen, with ADHD, is it a question of people not being motivated for success? And this was something that I learned in one of the courses that I took, is success is not just motivation, it's having the skill set to manage. And so what we know, and Trevor, I really want your input on this, it's a lot of times with ADHD, it's not that you don't know what to do, it's you don't know how to get there.
I mean, I 100% agree. I think, like a lot of times people with ADHD are categorized as lazy. I think that was something that I was always categorized, and you know, even by those closest to us, a lot of times I would be called like lazy by people, but it wasn't that I didn't want to do it. I didn't know how. Like it's so frustrating because it's hard for someone that doesn't have it to really be able to get into the brain of someone that does. Um, it's not that we don't want to do things; it's that we don't really know how to get started, and we don't know how to like get ourselves lazy. I can't mindset into that can do mindset. Um, it's just it's and it became infuriating, and it became like almost like I put my hands like I'm done, like I quit. You know what I mean? I think motivation is something that even now with like ADHD remedies being in my life, I still struggle with. But now I'm able to figure out ways around it because I know that I can do it, and there isn't an excuse for lack of a better term. Um, but it's so impossible for me back then to be able to find alternate routes to accomplish a goal.
So one of the things that I've learned is working backwards seems to really help. So when some people are looking at a project, they look at it forward and I'm going to do this chapter, this chapter, this chapter. What I've learned is like somehow with ADHD is look at the end goal and then work backwards and plan it from them. So do you find, or did you find even on the lacrosse field that you had to break things down into pieces and just take one piece at a time?
I don't think you could have nailed it on the head more. I think, not even on the lacrosse field that it became more prevalent to me, but now in my current day to day life, it's funny. Like for people that don't know, I work at Dick's Sporting Goods. I'm an associate. I'm a lead now. So a lot of my job is being able to do. We get these game plans and we get these end goals of things, and for me, a lot of it has been okay. This is a lot. I got a lot thrown on my plate. How am I going to accomplish this? And you said it perfectly. What I do is I take it one step at a time because looking at the full picture sometimes can be overwhelming. But in terms of that aspect, I so now when I'm at work, it's okay. Do this first, then this, then this, then this, and then boom, end goal. But then when it came to lacrosse, very similar to what you said. I looked at the end goal of winning a national championship and how can I do it? How can I take it step by step to accomplish that?
So here's the thing that's interesting. ADHD, it's a disorder of not being able to do what you know. So did you find that you had it in your head, just couldn't translate the action?
1,000%. I think one of the main like you know one of the main things of that was school. I knew how to get an A. I knew what it took to get an A. In terms of lacrosse, I knew what it took to get to college. I knew what it took to get a scholarship offer, but I wasn't able to do the stuff that it took. And not, it's so hard to explain because it's such a mental like block, but I knew what it took, but I just couldn't do what it took because my brain wouldn't let me. And that sounds such a lazy lack of motivational like response, but it was just it's just true.
So we had on here another lacrosse player a couple weeks ago. You may know him. His name's Owen Ellick. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, that's my best friend in the entire world.
Yeah, okay. So, another relation. So, if for people who don't know, Owen and Trevor are brothers, and they both are also lacrosse players. What do you see in your differences in how you guys approach mindset and motivation, if there is one?
So I'm actually gonna. So I don't mean to just flip the question on its head completely, but I like to talk. I would like to actually focus on the similarities of me and Owen.
Perfect.
And then once I go into the similarities, I can kind of give you the differences.
Hmm.
So in terms of our similarities, and I even notice this with my youngest sister now. And it's so freaky. And I talk about this with my dad all the time now, being on the outside of it. Me and Owen have such a different mindset from people in terms of we see a goal, there is nothing in front of us that can stop us from achieving that goal. Like we become almost hell bent on achieving that goal. If you wanna put it in a more specific term, it's almost like Thanos in the Avengers. He was hell bent on achieving the goal of snapping half the world out of this reality, and he didn't care who he killed. So me and Owen become so hell bent on success that when when any setback happens, like we feel crushed. But the one thing that we never do is we never quit. And so I see it's so funny. Like he'll call me sometimes and be like, Trev, like I just like I can see it. It's not even that he says it verbally, but you just see it in him that something happens and he's just so upset with himself because he knows how good he is. And like, it's just, he's not accomplishing what he wants to accomplish. And it's just so funny watching him. And I think it helps me be able to give him advice because I'm there. And now I see it with my sister. She's not a lacrosse player. She's in, cheerleading, but just in her like cheerleading and the competitiveness of it, it's still a very team oriented sport and, very similar in terms of like achieving goals that I see it with her now. But then comes the differences. I'm a very more outgoing person. I've always been a leader. While my brother, not to say he's not a leader, I'm a vocal leader. Like if just to put an example in high school, like my senior and junior year, I was known as that guy. Like you want to run through a wall for him because he's gonna make you feel like you're unstoppable. Owen's very keep to himself, work like work as if there's somebody always watching you. I'm very like loud and attention on me. Like I want pressure. Like clutch moments, give me the ball. And that's not to say he's not like that, but he is very less vocal about it. I'm very more vocal and more like I want eyes on me.
You have two very different leadership styles, but
Exactly.
I see it coming out in you guys in two different ways. You guys are sort of like a really good yin yang to each other. What I think a lot of people also don't know about ADHD, which can affect your life at work, at school, on the lacrosse field, or any other team sport, is there's a social bandwidth that goes on, right? Anybody who has neurodivergence is it takes a lot of energy to make it through a day, energy to read social cues because you have to really focus on someone way more than someone who doesn't have ADHD. And so at the end of the day, I've noticed that, with you and other people who have ADHD, they just collapse. They can't be bothered and they need some time usually in the morning to warm up. So I think for families or for people who are watching this, I think it's really important to have these conversations to kind of, if you're living with other people, to kind of figure out how to adjust. So Trevor's smiling because I'm sure he's thinking about how I'm bouncing off the walls at 5 in the morning and he needs like his time to like even just enter the world. And so, we came up sort of with this signal for him to let me know when his bandwidth was done, and he would have his headphones on. And when his headphones were on, that was no speaking zone. Now, I would talk anyway. I just wouldn't expect an answer, right? I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah, I mean, you see me smiling, like, because in the morning, like, practices for me in college were we were on the field at 6:50. So I was
That's
always the
all
first guy.
mindset. That's all
Yep.
mindset to get you up and out the door, correct?
And I always was the first one in the locker room. So I
Mhm.
would be up earlier. I would be up at 5:30 every morning. And, for me, that was my peace. That was my calm before the storm. Because once guys start trickling in at, 6:30, 6:30, it's go time. Like, it's practice time. Like, you need to be up and at them. Like, you need to be able, and lacrosse is one of those things, especially as a defenseman, as myself, I'm communicating all practice. Like, it's not, you can't be quiet or else you're not doing your job. So for me, that 5:30 to 6:30 was Trevor time, for lack of a better term. And mom would be bouncing up off the walls, like so excited that I woke up and I'm ready to talk. That it would kind of be like a little bit frustrating because I haven't woken up yet. Like this is Trevi time. Like my drive to school would be that 25-minute drive. I'd go down Beeline Highway. I'd look at the hospital. Like all that was my quiet. That was my peace. I'd listen to whatever was on the radio. And I just like caused a little bit of a rift, but we figured it out. Headphones, all that stuff, and like you said, like it takes a lot out of us. Like I wouldn't party as much as other people did in college. I wouldn't, at the end of the day, be going out and doing all this stuff because I would be drained. And I was also working like basically a full-time job coaching on top of that. So after my day was over, like I couldn't party, like because my social barriers would just be done. I'd be cooked, for lack of a better term.
It's such a sacrifice. I've always felt a sacrifice for the so-called normal college experience to be a college athlete. Do you feel that you sacrificed the normal experience, which for you wasn't that normal anyway because you started college during COVID? But do you feel that you lost something, or do you feel like, no, this was just the experience I needed to have?
No, it was the experience I needed to have. And I said this my entire life. And I think I said this to you multiple times. That sacrifice to me was always worth it. Lacrosse was everything to me, and it still is. It's still a major part of my life. Now that I'm coaching and doing all this stuff, and I'll never be without it. This sacrifice was necessary because I don't think I would have, to be quite frank with you, I don't think I would have been able to succeed in college without, lacrosse, because lacrosse was my motivation for going to class every day. Like, I needed to get good grades and all this stuff. And when I was in my depths of hell and when I was in the worst spots, lacrosse is what drove me to class, drove me to school and all this stuff. And I think, those some of those sacrifices that I made for lacrosse still would have had to been made for school. But to me, I just felt like that sacrifice was 110% worth it.
So now you have to, bear with the embarrassing question. So is it really that bad to have your mom cheering in the stands for you?
No, and I mean, I definitely don't think so. I think looking back on it too, I was a lot more embarrassed than I really wish that I really should have been, because I just loved to have someone there. And it was tough for my dad to get there because he was in New York, and he's retired now, but he wasn't then, so it was hard for him to get there. And so my mom was my biggest fan, and it was like while I may have acted embarrassed at times, it was always so nice to know that I had someone there. Um, and just someone that really appreciated my hard work and saw the behind the scenes, and all they cared about was just seeing my success.
So who are your biggest influences besides Iron Man? Who do you read? What podcast do you listen to besides this one? Like, what are the things that really inspire you? I mean, Owen, of course, David Goggins is like his big go-to guy. Do you have anybody who you specifically will look to?
It's kind of funny you say that. Well, I think my inspirations have changed so much. Growing up, it was always, Tim Tebow, because, he balanced his faith so well with, and what stemmed to his motivation was his faith. But, that's kind of changed as I've gotten older. While I'm still his biggest fan and a super fan almost. It's actually kind of funny. I think my inspiration started to become like, you know, my teammates. I remember in high school, my inspirations were like a few of my older teammates. Like in high school, it was like guys like Christian Loud and Kevin Eli who took me under their wing. Like I saw those guys going to play Division I lacrosse, and they inspired me. And they constantly communicated to me that college lacrosse is possible. And they just inspired me to be better every single day because I saw them do it. And then when I got to college, I had a mentor, Coach Mel, who was there for me every step of the way. And just the way he attacked life every single day was a truly inspiring thing to me. And the way he was able to balance the cross and use it. And then on top of that, too, my other teammates, like Christian Tomei was another one. He came in like my junior year, had been out of lacrosse for years, and you know had dealt with some serious personal issues and put that all aside and became a better version of himself. And now he's on, the lacrosse network every other week. He just had 21 saves and a goal. He's going to be playing Division One lacrosse next year.
I saw that.
And then you want to go into your personal life. Like you were a big inspiration to me, no matter how much life threw at you, like, cause at times it was a shitstorm for us. You always rebounded. And I think that was the biggest thing for me was seeing you rebound every day, knowing that it was possible. So like I would get, because I went through some tough times in college, but the one thing I never did was quit. I never quit. I may have let it get to me more than I should have at times, but I never quit. And I think that I attribute that to you more than anyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Trev. Now, can you tell everybody, do you have some advice that you would give to people who have ADHD? Maybe who are listening to this right now and never recognized it as ADHD.
I think so people that haven't recognized it, I think you're better than you think. You're not a failure. You're not like you're not a failure. You're still a light in a dark world. Don't let it control you, because at times, it can be something that allows you to quit and gives you an out. But for me, I think the biggest thing that I started to realize, like now, when there's something that I don't like, I say to myself, oh, I don't want to do that. I do it now. Because it's almost like it's that ADHD trying to make you quit. And I think to someone that has it now, that's, maybe gotten the help that they needed and all that stuff. Don't feel that your ADHD is automatically cured. Don't feel that, while it is, somewhat, it's been leveled out, it never goes away. So continue to work on yourself, continue to better yourself. Don't feel like, oh, it's gone. Like I can just like everything's okay. Like continue to work on yourself, because I think the biggest thing that I've learned in my life is there's always room to grow. And I wish I would have known a lot of these things that I've learned outside of college when I was in there. But those are some lessons that I would definitely give to people.
So tell everybody, Trev, like where are you now? You moved from Florida back to New York. So you're in New York right now. What are your future goals, future plans? Anybody who's got questions, where can they reach you?
So yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere. Social media, Instagram, Trevor.Ellick. Facebook, I'm on. I'm pretty sure it's just my name. TikTok, same thing. And then Twitter, same thing. So any questions, I'm all ears. I love just like you'll probably see me in the comment section of any sports Instagram post that has a lot of likes on Sports Center and stuff, because I'm always commenting, not for responses, but just to get my opinion out there. And then just to the first part of your question, what am I doing now? So I am working at Dick's Sporting Goods. I really love the environment that I'm in. Originally, I thought it was just going to be kind of like a stopgap job, but people that I work with and the company's willingness to help you grow have really kind of kept me there and have made me see a vision of a future there. But on top of that, I'm also coaching. So I'm working for True Lacrosse as just a coach right now. I'm kind of stepping out of my director role that I had in Florida and kind of just focusing on being a coach and, kind of settling into life after college. And then on top of that, I am looking to go back to school, because coaching in college has always been the dream. And I think that getting my master's and trying to chase that dream is something that I do want to accomplish. And I haven't even thrown playing out the window yet. There are a few schools that have been interested. And while I'm not sure what I'm going to do, I think, the field has always called to me, and it's going to be hard to say no. So we'll kind of see where that goes. Maybe if I come back on a future episode, I'll update you guys. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Because I think the listeners are going to want to know, is there a trip to Florida in your future or a relocation?
For right now, I'm in New York, but I'm definitely going to go visit my mom. There's someone special in Florida, so I got to see her. And I do still have a lot of people that I care about in Florida. I mean, my school is there, so a lot of my teammates that are going to be graduating this year, they're still there. On top of that, a lot of the guys I coached with and players that I coached are still there. So I'm definitely going to be making my way down there at some point, whenever it fits into my schedule. But for right now, I see myself in the cold, on Long Island. But don't be surprised if that changes in the near future, because there are some opportunities potentially down the line that I do see myself chasing.
You never know what's going to happen, but you guys heard it here first. He is committed to making a visit to Florida to see his mom. So thank you so much, Trevor, for being a guest with us today. And don't forget to tune in to the next episode of From Mayhem to Mindset with Dr. Laura. Have a great day.
Have a good one, guys.
Thanks for joining us on From Mayhem to Mindset. If you found today's episode helpful, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave a 5-star review. It really helps spread the message. Want to dive deeper? Check out my book, Wisdom from the Universe, available now on Amazon. And if you're looking for a speaker to inspire and transform, I'd love to connect. Visit www.lauraellick.com to learn more. Remember, you don't have to just survive, you can thrive. See you next time.